Dr. Chaudhary, I have gone through your book in one go. Those are fascinating stories, I will tell. I really liked it. And of course, they were very, very interesting. Now, I believe that the characters that you have used are all real and not fictitious in any way. Did you pick up any fictitious character?
Not really. They're all real, but their names have been changed and the circumstances have changed. But they are basically real life stories, real life people.
But it is your story, actually, Dr. Chaudhary. And you are writing the book about your travels around the different countries. But why did you use the name of Ajay to narrate the stories? What was behind that? Who is this Ajay?
Well, Ajay is actually my adopted son. He is 9 years old now. So when he sees the book on the table, he asks me sometimes, quite mystified, Baba, why is my name on the book? He has no idea. He has no idea of what's going on. But then why I use his name? Look, I wanted to use my name, but for some reason I didn't feel like it. So I looked around for another name and it is Ajay's name that came up because he's always in our minds. So it's Ajay, the central character.
Shall we go now about the stories individually so that you can tell the audience what you wanted to say about this individually? Say, for example, the first story. In the first story, the telephone call. You talk about a telephone operator in Mongolia who tries to repay a debt which does not exist. How can that be?
A telephone operator in Mongolia tries to repay a debt which does not exist. It can happen. But before I go into it, let me talk about the country of Mongolia. It is a wonderful country. It is huge. It is almost half the size of India, but there are only 2 to 3 million people in the whole of Mongolia. So you can imagine how vast the country is and how sparsely populated it is. It is in Siberia, in the middle of Siberia. It is frightfully cold. In the month of February, the temperature can reach minus 28 degrees centigrade. But then that is what this country is all about. Now, I asked a professor in Mongolia, I asked him, Professor, you have such a beautiful country. Your hero Chinggis Khan, why did he travel thousands of kilometers to the east and thousands of kilometers to the west when he had such a beautiful country? He said, claustrophobia. I said, claustrophobia? How can you have claustrophobia in Mongolia? It's open. He said, we have China on one side, Russia on one side. We feel hemmed in. So when we see the open sea, then we say that we are free. This is what Mongolia is all about. They are expert horsemen. They can travel for thousands of kilometers and go across vast distances. In this background, we have this young lady who is in her first job as a telephone operator in a hotel in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. She connects hotel guests to most of them are foreigners, to their countries when they want to speak to their families. On this day, suddenly, a man comes in looking very agitated and saying, could you please connect me to my country? My son is very ill and I need to talk to my family, please. Now this young girl, she goes out of her way. She tries her best and she connects this man to his family. The man speaks outside for quite a while. And suddenly she finds that the man has left without paying, without making payment. She is devastated. Now the hotel asks her to pay back this amount which she could not realize from the man. Now, she was a proud person. She kept her head up, and with her meager salary and undergoing tremendous hardships, she managed slowly to pay back this debt. Now we're talking about this debt. But in the end, she found love and happiness. And she had no complaints. Now, we are now going to talk about the debt. How can such a debt not exist? It can exist if there is no communication between organizations, between the hotel and the telephone authorities and the central exchange. Now, they did not realize that the bill that day was not payable, and this the effort on the part of the young lady went on. So the details are in the story. We'll see the story.
We'll see to it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, in the next story, the doctor, a brilliant young doctor from Cameroon, reunites with his family and wife, which is a blessing in disguise. But actually, what made him drift away from his family?
Yes, this is a brilliant young doctor from Cameroon who reunites with his wife. Cameroon is a country in West Africa. It has got different social norms. Most families have their own children to look after, and also the children of their brother, in case the brother wants his children looked after. So the elder brother agrees to look after his children as well. So very often families can drift apart because of lack of resources. Now, in this case, from what I understood from Dr. Itonga, incidentally, he saved my life. What I understood from Dr. Itonga was that his family drifted apart, not because of lack of resources, but because of excess of resources. Dr. Itonga was serving in Juba, in the UN clinic in South Sudan. The salary and allowances that was given to him was far too much for an ordinary Cameroonian family to handle. There was mistrust, misunderstanding, jealousies. So this, I believe, is what led to the two sides drifting apart. Fortunately, there was a blessing in disguise in the form of an incident where the police was involved in making a false arrest, and Dr. Itonga was able to, he decided to give up his work in Juba and go back to his family and start a medical clinic. He was also a doctor. So that is how it ended.
Well, in the prison island in Zanzibar, which is very interesting, an old fisherman out in the sea links the history of Zanzibar and its fortunes to the love story of a princess. How can the fortunes of a nation be linked to the private life of a young princess?
Well, this is set in Zanzibar, as you say. Zanzibar, as you know, is an island of the east coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean. It is a unique island. In its heyday, Zanzibar had rivaled London in commercial importance. It had electric street lamps before London had them. Now, this young princess was one of the daughters of the Sultan, the Omani Sultan. She was an expert horseman. She could recite the Quran by heart. She knew mathematics. She could handle protocols in the palace, between the intrigues. She could correspond independently with diplomats and dignitaries. So the advisor to the Sultan went to the Sultan and said, "Your Highness, you have an asset here. Why don't you use her for governance work in your cabinet?" While the Sultan was considering this, the princess met a German trader while horse riding and fell in love. The news spread like wildfire across Zanzibar. And the Sultan told the advisor to tell the princess that this cannot be tolerated. She must leave or be banished. The advisor went to the Sultan and said to the Sultan, "Your Highness, you have an asset in this princess." She reminded the advisor of Queen Fatima, who was one of the most successful queens of Zanzibar, her capabilities. And that he said that his German to-be husband was willing to embrace the faith. So he said, "Let them be here. Let her be in your cabinet. Let the German stay and build bridges with the British and the Germans who are trying to destabilize Zanzibar." The Sultan did not agree. Now we all know that the actions of our rulers affect our lives. So when the Sultan did not agree, the princess left suddenly one night for Aden, never to return. After that, the Sultan died soon thereafter. And the next Sultan was not found acceptable by the British. They started shelling Zanzibar from the sea. And it went down from that time onwards to what it is today. So they say that it is the princess, the fact that the princess went away, that led to the fall of Zanzibar. And most people believe it to be true.